I survived 3 nights as a fire lookout. I wasn't watching the forest. Something was watching me. I never tell people where this happened because I know exactly what they'd do. They'd drive there. They'd bring cameras, drones, flashlights, and a YouTube channel. If you somehow figure out the location anyway, do yourself a favor. If you hear someone climbing the tower after midnight, don't look down. My name is Declan Avery, and in September 2024, I took a temporary job as a fire lookout in a remote section of the Cascade Mountains in Washington. It paid well, required almost no experience, and sounded peaceful. My job was simple: spend 3 nights in an old observation tower, report any signs of wildfire, and log weather conditions. The nearest town was over 40 miles away. No cell service, no neighbors, just trees stretching farther than I could see. The ranger who drove me there was named Russ Holden. He was in his 60s and had the kind of face that looked permanently tired. Before leaving, he handed me a radio. "If it stops working," he said, "don't climb down until sunrise." I laughed. "What if there's an emergency?" "There won't be." He paused before getting back into his truck. "And if somebody starts climbing the stairs after dark." He looked directly into my eyes. "Count the footsteps." Then he drove away. The first day was exactly what I expected. I watched hawks circle the valley, made coffee, read a paperback. At sunset, the forest became unbelievably quiet. No birds, no insects, just wind. Around 11:40 p.m., the radio crackled. I expected Russ. Instead, I heard breathing, slow, steady. Then a man's voice whispered, "Is someone in the tower tonight?" I pressed the transmit button. "This is Fire Lookout 7. Who is this?" Only static answered. I checked every radio frequency. Nothing. At exactly 12:18 a.m., I heard footsteps, metal stairs. Someone was climbing toward me. Clang, clang, clang. I remembered Russ's warning. Count them, so I did. 23. Then silence. The tower had 46 steps. Whoever was climbing had stopped exactly halfway. I waited. Nothing. Finally, I grabbed my flashlight and looked through the trapdoor. Nobody. The staircase was empty, and I convinced myself the metal had expanded from the cold. I barely slept. The second night was worse. At 12:18, the footsteps returned. Clang, clang, clang. Again I counted. 23. Silence. Then one more step. 24. 5 minutes later. 25. It wasn't climbing. It was waiting, taking one step every few minutes. By 1:10 a.m., it had reached step 31. I could hear the metal vibrating beneath each footfall, but every time I looked, nothing. At 2:03, the footsteps stopped. 39. Only 7 steps below the trapdoor. Then something scratched underneath the floor. Not an animal. Fingernails, dragging slowly across the wood. I sat frozen until sunrise. The moment daylight touched the trees, every sound stopped. Russ returned that afternoon with supplies. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. Finally he asked, "Did you open the trap door?" "No." He nodded once. "Good. What is it?" "I don't know." "You've heard it too?" He stared into the forest instead of answering, then quietly said, "Everyone who opened the trapdoor quit." I should have left. Instead, I stayed one more night. I still regret that decision. At sunset, thick fog rolled through the valley. By midnight, I couldn't see the bottom of the tower. Exactly at 12:18, the climbing began. This time, there was no stopping. Step after step, steady, deliberate. I counted automatically. 30, 35, 40, 41, 42, 43. The tower shook gently. 44, 45. Then silence. Whoever or whatever it was stood directly beneath the trap door. The wooden hatch began trembling, not violently, softly, like someone testing whether it was locked. Then came a knock. 3 slow taps. Tap, tap, tap. A man's voice floated upward. "I'm lost." It sounded terrified. "Please." "I've been climbing for hours." I didn't answer. "My leg is broken." Silence. Then another voice. A woman's. "Declan." My blood froze. It was my mother's voice. She had died 4 years earlier. "Sweetheart?" "Open the door." I backed away so quickly I hit the wall. The voices kept changing. A child crying. An old man coughing. "Russ?" Then my own voice. "Open it." Every instinct screamed at me to lift the hatch, to prove someone needed help. Instead, I remembered something. The footsteps. There were only 46 stairs, but I'd counted more than 60 voices. That realization saved my life. Whatever stood beneath me was never climbing alone. The scratching returned, this time directly under the trapdoor. Long, slow, patient, then complete silence. I looked at my watch. 3:41 a.m. Almost sunrise. Then the radio came alive. "Declan!" It was Russ. His voice sounded panicked. "Do not open that hatch!" Before I could answer, another radio on the desk crackled. I only had one radio. The second voice was also Russ. Calm, friendly. "He's lying." "Open it!" I stared in horror. One voice shouted, the other whispered. Both sounded identical. The calm voice laughed. Then every sound stopped at once. The silence felt worse than the voices. Minutes later, the first rays of sunlight spilled across the trees. The scratching ended. The fog lifted. I looked through the trapdoor. The stairs were empty, but every metal step was wet, as though dozens of muddy feet had climbed them during the night. Russ picked me up at noon. Neither of us spoke during the drive. About 20 miles later, I finally asked, "How many people worked that tower before me?" He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "In the last 20 years? Yeah." He swallowed. 12. "What happened to them?" 9 quit. "And the other 3? He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled into a ranger station. Inside, an old bulletin board displayed faded employee photographs. 11 faces. I counted twice. There are only 11. Russ quietly pointed toward the last picture. A smiling young man wearing the same uniform I'd worn. Name, Declan Avery. My stomach dropped. The hiring date beneath the photograph read, September 2014, 10 years earlier. I laughed nervously. "That's impossible." Russ looked genuinely confused. "What do you mean?" "That's me." He frowned. "No." He tapped the photograph. "That was the last lookout who disappeared." I couldn't breathe. I pulled out my driver's license. My wallet was empty, and no license, no bank cards, nothing. Even my employee paperwork was gone. Russ slowly stepped backward. "Sir." His voice trembled. "Who are you?" I wish I could tell you what happened after that. I honestly don't know. What I do know is this. Every September, I wake at exactly 12:18 a.m. I hear metal footsteps below my bedroom floor. They always stop after the 45th step. Then someone knocks, 3 slow taps. And every year, the voice sounds a little more like mine.